religions, if it's all right with our listeners. There was an article that I found interesting about Hispanics and Catholicism. It begins by saying, by all accounts, Hispanics are the future of Catholicism in America. I would go so far as to say that Hispanics are the future of Catholicism. The reason that there is a South American Pope is because around the world, people are fleeing Catholicism. Roman Catholicism has had a mass exodus for a number of reasons. Two of them come to light immediately. It's not just because of the grave incidences around the world of priestly pedophilia, which was deliberately covered up by the Roman Catholic Church, and also the money laundering schemes that were uncovered by the Vatican's bank. The Roman Catholic Church has had a very difficult time, especially in recruiting priests. In fact, a disproportionate number of the priests came from a seminary in Mexico, where the head of that seminary was also the largest contributor. His donors were the largest financiers of the Roman Catholic Church. And it was determined, it was learned, that he was not only engaging in pedophilic sex, but he was also engaged in womanizing and also in illicit drug use. And so it was a particularly challenging situation for St. John Paul the Second, now that he has been canonized. He, recognizing that without the new priests that were being added to the Roman Catholic Church by the Marcial in Mexico, that there would be no way to keep the church even at its present size. That the Roman Catholic churches couldn't be staffed if he wasn't continuing to supply a disproportionate number of priests. And he recognized that he was accumulating billions of dollars in donations. The guy of Domino's Pizza, for example, was one of the largest contributors to Father Marcial. And so when John Paul II learned that he was using heroin and other very toxic drugs, that he was engaged in sex with prostitutes and with a number of parishioners' wives, and that he was also engaged having sex with the seminary students, he was challenged to say, what should I do? You know, it's morally, you'd say, well, you got to get rid of this guy. You have to disown his horrible behavior. But for John Paul II, St. John Paul II now, he was much more concerned about the flow of money and the flow of new priests. And so he simply had the Roman Catholic Church overlook it. I think his organization was called the Legions of Christ, but I'm not positive. And it shows you that just how dependent the Roman Catholic Church had become on Hispanics. It's a reason why they have a Hispanic Pope right now. But, of course, one of the problems here is that Hispanic Catholicism is quite different than the breed of Catholicism that was amalgamated in Rome and the Eastern Orthodox Church. And that is because it blended the pagan religions of the Aztecs, the Mayans, and the Incas into the religion to create a unique blend. But that is the future of the Roman Catholic Church. Make no mistake. Not just in America. Well, the article goes on to say, already most young Roman Catholics in the United States are Hispanic. That's also true. If you get outside of Boston, what you find is that a highly disproportionate number of Roman Catholics now are Hispanic. And soon that may be true of the overall Catholic population worldwide. So they've come to the same conclusion that I came to, that right now, not only are a disproportionate number of American Roman Catholics Hispanic, soon worldwide that'll be the case. I think right now it's about 50-50, and it's about ready to burst over the top. But the Hispanic nature of Roman Catholicism faces a big challenge, according to this article. Hispanics are leaving Catholicism at a striking rate. It has been clear for years that Catholicism, both the United States and Latin America, has been losing adherents to a number of institutions. Now, this article begins by saying to evangelical Protestantism, and in particular the Pentecostal and other charismatic churches. That's really not true. It's not uncommon for journalists to present things that they later contradict in their own story. The reality is that most Hispanic Roman Catholics that are leaving the church are leaving Christianity. They're not going to another variation of Christianity. They're just saying, I don't really want any part of this anymore. I don't want to be identified with this. And an increasing percentage of American Hispanic population is made up of people born in this country and simultaneously trying to determine whether they should join the majority of Americans who now express no faith, or they should continue to remain within the church. More American Hispanics are leaving Catholicism and becoming religiously unaffiliated than going anyplace else. So here they've, even the same paragraph, acknowledged that most American Hispanics are leaving Catholicism to become religiously unaffiliated. The seemingly mind-bending result, I don't know why it's mind-bending, is that even as a rising percentage of American Catholics are Hispanic, a falling percentage of American Hispanics are Catholic. So what they're not being able to grasp here is that while there is an exodus of Hispanics from Roman Catholicism, there is an enormous exodus from Mexico into America by Hispanics. So the overall makeup of Roman Catholicism is becoming exceedingly Hispanic, even as Hispanics are leaving the Roman Catholic Church and alarming the numbers to Roman Catholics, because non-Hispanics are leaving the church even faster, and Hispanics are becoming a disproportionate percentage of Americans. I think now that the Hispanic population of America is right around 40 to 42% of America, and growing very rapidly. I think Hispanics now are the largest minority by a huge percentage in America. So that's how this is all playing out. 1/4 of Hispanics in the United States are former Catholics. 25% of the population, of the Hispanic population of America, are former Catholics, according to a new poll released Wednesday by the Pew Research Institute. By comparison, about 10% of all Americans are former Catholics. So in America as a whole of 300 million people, 30 million Americans were at one time Catholics and have abandoned the Catholic Church. Now, that's not to tell you what percentage of Catholics have abandoned the church, because it's going to be much higher than that. Let's say that approximately 1/3 of Americans are Roman Catholic. That would mean that 30%, 35% of them have abandoned the church, 1/3. Because this is just, of the overall American population, 10% are former Catholics, have abandoned the Catholic Church. Which means that of American Catholics, about 1/3 have left the church, have abandoned it, have recognized that it is rotten. That's why I say constantly in this program as we introduce this program that we are addressing the fastest growing segment of society. I mean, imagine that. Just in the last few decades, a third of the members of the Roman Catholic Church in America have left the church. And that is really extraordinary. 10% of the entire population of Americans are comprised of former Catholics. The religious affiliation of Hispanics is of enormous significance to those interested in the future of religion in the United States, because Hispanics make up such a large and growing faction of the nation's population. Almost all Hispanic immigrants arrive from countries that are predominantly Roman Catholic. So the religious choices made by Hispanics are particularly significant for the Catholic Church. What's happening here, too, is that it's true that a substantial percentage of the Hispanic population in the United States has come from countries where Roman Catholicism was the dominant factor in the society. The dominant factor in Mexico. It's the dominant factor throughout most of the countries in Central America. It's the dominant influence in most of South America. And so, while Roman Catholicism is dominant, it holds sway on their adherents, because to leave the Roman Catholic Church is to suffer societal isolation. Roman Catholics are extraordinarily mean when it comes to anyone who leaves them. They threaten all manner of hell and damnation upon them. And so in a community that is dominated by Roman Catholicism, it's really tough to leave the church and to survive. But when they come to the United States and there is no penalty in terms of societal alienation from leaving the church, they're leaving in droves. When freedom prevails, Roman Catholics flee the religion. This is an extraordinary development, and it is why this program is resonating with so many people. It's why it's important that those who control what is aired on their stations come to realize that the majority of their listeners agree with what we're saying. Boston College, which is a Catholic university and the most Catholic city in America, took a survey of Catholics and concluded that the few remaining, well, I can't say few remaining, but the remaining Hispanic Catholics participate in the sacramental activities. They show up for Mass, they show up for baptisms, they do First Communions, but that's it. They don't do anything else. Ceremonial stuff, yeah, we're right there. We'll do the baptism, we'll do First Communions, yeah, we'll do the ceremonial stuff, but the rest of it, nah, not going to apply. And so it is also now showing that a very substantial number of Americans are rejecting the church. Overall, the Pew study finds that 55% of Hispanics in the United States would identify themselves as being Catholic. Now, that was in 2013. In 2010, just 3 years earlier, the number was 67%. 67% of all of the Hispanics in the United States, which represent 40% of Americans, 42% of Americans, 67% identified themselves as Roman Catholics. In 2010, only 55% identified themselves as Catholics in 2013. And that's a seismic shift. Roman Catholicism has to be absolutely scared out of their ever-loving gourd. Because should the United States stop funding the Roman Catholic Church, it's in serious trouble. About 22% of Hispanics identify themselves as Protestant, including 16% who say they are evangelical. About 18% say they are unaffiliated. The vast majority of those who have left the church have left to become unreligious. This is a quote. "It's surprising because of the size of the decline in such a short period," says Carrie Funk, a senior researcher at Pew. "We're seeing an increase in religious pluralism among Hispanics and also a greater polarization on the religious spectrum." Yeah, people choosing not to be religious. Previous research noted that Hispanics in the United States are leaving the religion as they assimilate into the more broadly secular culture. That's the point I'm making. America actually isn't creating a more secular culture unless you view secularism in America as the alternative religion. And I think that secularism is actually the religion of the media, of politicians, of academia. It's socialist secular humanism. It's become a religion in the country, and proof that it's a religion in this country is political correctness. The fact that you cannot say anything in an American university, you can't say anything in the American media that is contrary to the imposition of political correctness. There's an article sent to me today. It's a couple of guys that are in the real estate business, real successful firm, handsome guys, articulate, and the Discovery Channel or one of those kind of channels decided they were going to give them a reality show. But it was learned that one of the two brothers spoke in opposition to the politicization of homosexuality. And so the cable station decided that it would cancel the show. Now, if you want to present a film showing the mutilation of 125 million little girls in the name of Islam, and it's beautifully documented and tastefully presented considering the nature of the subject, at an American university, you are prevented from doing so. And so there is a national religion of America. It's socialist secular humanism. And they are far less tolerant than any of the religions that preceded them. So Hispanics are being educated now in American universities, American high schools, American grammar schools, and in those schools they are universally indoctrinated, particularly in these public schools, they are universally indoctrinated with the national religion of the United States of America, socialist secular humanism. And because young minds constantly bombarded with this religion acquiesce to it, a disproportionate number of Roman Catholics are becoming secular humanists. The Pew poll, which is the source of the information that is in this article, finds that the rise in the number of Hispanics who say they are unaffiliated is particularly pronounced among Hispanics under the age of 30, which is affirming what I'm sharing with you. The reason is that those Hispanics have been educated, indoctrinated in American schools. And as a result, they have embraced the religion of American academia, which is socialist secular humanism. It comes at a time, they say, when Americans are becoming part of what religion researchers call the nones, people who say that they are not affiliated with any religious tradition. Now, I'm going to tell you, they actually are affiliated with a religious tradition. a religious tradition that was conceived quite some time ago, and that is now the dominant religious tradition in most of Western Europe and throughout the United States. And while it is being referred to as the nuns, it is actually socialist secular humanism. It is extraordinarily pervasive, and its moral code is dominant in America. It is dominant in the military, it's dominant in the judicial system, it's dominant in academia, it's dominant in the media, it's dominant in politics. It's called socialist secular humanism. Hello, Glenn. What do you think about all of this? Glenn, we've got you on...
Sorry about that. Sorry about that. I think we can a second test and not know. Then get you unmuted there. Sorry. This thing about the socialist secular humanism, the problem I have with it is grammatical, because that which is secular is by definition not religious. It may be, it certainly is an ideology, it's ideological, often with great passion and even totalitarian attitude. But it's kind of like one of those.
So you're suggesting you can't have a religion based on a ironic or hypocritical notion. That it would be inappropriate for a religion to call themselves non-religious.
Yeah, right. It can be secular, right? It can't be a secular religion.
But that's assuming that everyone communicates using terms that correctly define their nature. That would be assuming that when Muslims say that Islam means peace, that Islam really does mean peace, and that that is what they are identified with. It's the nature of doctrines of human causes to misrepresent themselves, and so to say that socialist secular humanism is a belief system isn't any different.
Technology, but religion, in terms of denotatively implies something.
I'm using religion as the word was originally conceived in Latin. It means to bind, and so people are bound to the common good, as they would view themselves. They're bound to enlightenment. They are bound to the majority. They're bound to that which their professors are articulating.
Here's the thing. One of these days, as you get, here's what I've been thinking. As you get to be more and more well-known, and you get on the map, and you become more successful, and thus offend more people, you're going to eventually, people are going to come after you. And the religious, and I don't mean physically, I mean in terms of reputation. And so there's no way that the atheists of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, for example, or the atheist talk show host from it's going to they're going to say, yeah, he's trying to, denotatively, literally turn the tables and redefine the word religion and say that I'm religious and he's not. He's talking about, I know one particular talk show host in particular who would refer to you as believing as your great invisible playmate in the sky, and say, it's going to say that, Yahweh is your great invisible playmate in the sky, and that you're turning the tables, and you're the religious one trying to call him, who is, a confessed non-religious person, that you're messing up the language and trying to turn the tables.
Ad hominem attacks and straw man, both of which they would be.
Straw man. They're going to go after the word, after the nomenclature.
They're going to use a straw man to create the notion that I am religious. That would be a straw man argument, because there is no basis.
An invisible personal record.
I actually don't believe in anything. Actually, I don't believe in anything. Actually, an epistemologist is going to kick your butt on that one. Yeah, that's right.
You've obviously never studied epistemology. hate to say that.
That's not. The fact is, the matter is that belief requires something to be unknowable or ununderstandable. Therefore, belief is what fills the void. Those who know don't need to believe. Those who understand do not require faith. And so, belief is Glenn. I'm sorry, but the combination of your phone connection and everything else, and I'm happy to respond to your points, but. The reality is that it takes faith to be an atheist. It takes faith because you have to believe that there is no God. And there is no way to prove the point, and evidence and reason actually demands the opposite conclusion. And so to be an atheist requires faith. That's why most of the smartest people that I've encountered along the way, where we've had long discussions about religion and about evidence and reason, have come to realize that atheism is not sustainable without just enormous amounts of faith. And they will first move from being an atheist to being an agnostic, because the position of saying, I don't know, is much easier to justify than to say, there is no God. Now, my position is quite different. What I will say is that Yahweh not only introduced himself to us through the Torah, but that he proved beyond any doubt that he exists, and that he did so using prophecy. He did so using a precise accounting of his involvement with the universe and with life and with his covenant in such a way that it is not possible to be informed and rational and to conclude otherwise. In other words, he did everything that is required to prove beyond any doubt that he exists, that his name is Yahweh, and that he authored the Torah, prophets, and Psalms. And so it's an entirely different proposition to say, I believe that there is no God as an atheist, to move to an agnostic position of, I don't know if there is a God or not, I'm going to be one of the nuns, or to go and use evidence and reason to prove that God exists, and to come to know him based upon the proof that he has provided. And if you do that, what you have done is used evidence and reason to come to an irrefutable conclusion, as opposed to exercising faith. Now, as it relates to secularism becoming a religion through socialist secular humanism, Huxley, who was the person who promoted the humanist religion, based it largely on Darwin's findings. He extrapolated Darwin to promote the idea that since life spontaneously generated, that there is no need for a creator. Now, of course, virtually everything that he has concluded is impossible. It's not just unlikely, it's impossible. He is refuted by the evidence. Like Cambrian explosion by itself refutes it. The nature of the genome to degrade rather than to add information refutes the proposition. The notion that given enough time, the impossible becomes possible was negated by the more recent findings of how soon life appeared after the Earth cooled to the point that life could exist. And so now you have to believe to be a socialist secular humanist, but it was conceived to be an alternative religion, just like Nazism. Well, most people would label Nazism a political mantra. But Hitler wrote it as a religion. When Adam Weishaupt created the Order of the Illums and wanted to promote his ideas, he recognized that his primary foe would be Catholicism, both Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholicism varieties, because of the influence they were having on society. And Adam Weishaupt recognized there was no way to promote his ideas and to make them popular with the general public unless he could conceive of a replacement religion. And his replacement religion was not in a God, but instead an enlightened man. So that's the history of it. Now, that doesn't mean that an atheist isn't going to chafe at the idea that his position requires more faith than does the religious position. That doesn't mean that the atheist isn't going to chafe at the idea of humanism being called a religion. But even as it relates to socialism, which is a form of communism, socialism is promoted as a religion in communist countries. Men and their sayings become scripture. Men are chiseled into the images of God. That was the nature of communist China and of the Soviet Union for decades. Welcome back to Shattering This. Glenn's phone getting better. We'll have him back here in a moment. But one point prior to that, it would be expected for the advocates of atheism to try to label someone who has used evidence and reason to come to know Yahweh as religious. But they would have to make their point out of ignorance. Because if they actually studied the Torah, prophets, and Psalms, they would come to realize that Yahweh is anti-religious. He is universally opposed to not just religion as the atheist would define it, which would be a belief system in God. Yahweh is opposed to political schemes. He is opposed to economic schemes. He's opposed to patriotic and military schemes. He's opposed to all of it. And God's view would be similar, if not exactly the same, as the one that I'm articulating. That there really is no distinction between religious views and political views and economic doctrines. That they all blend together. And they all become institutionalized societal belief systems. So with that, Glenn, we're going to hope that you have a little better connection this time, and I hope that there was some benefit of that explanation.
Well, yeah, actually, yes, no, I'm thoroughly familiar with all the arguments, but and I think maybe you and I can maybe tend to off the air sometime, because I assure you I'm intimately familiar with all these ins and outs, training in philosophy of language and epistemology and stuff like that. And there's going to come a point at which, it seems to me that when you come against actual academics, people with actual experience in these realms, that your use of certain English language terms is going to get you waxed. Because, like your argument, in other words, no, I'm not making an argument from ignorance if I say, talk about, believing in Yahweh as religious, okay? But if you study 200 years of epistemology and the classic historical arguments about certainty, when you use terms evidence and reason, I almost always chuckle because I think it's spoken like a true 20th century logical positivist, and without epistemological training. But there's no such thing as a life lived without faith. You've not seen the miracles of the Torah. It is a matter of faith for you that the Torah is inspired. Okay, you haven't seen Yahweh, so that which is not a sight,
you're wrong, and you're wrong in both accounts. But you're entitled to being wrong. You can articulate whatever position you wish. It's just that you happen to be wrong. I have seen Yahweh. I have listened to him. I have come to know him. If you want to see Yahweh, read his words as they are proclaimed in his Torah. He's manifest right there. Undeniable, real, approachable, credible, consistently accurate, and consistently proving that he is there. If you want to see Yahweh, crack open the Torah. You'll find him there. Tangible. Real. There really is no more effective way to introduce yourself, to become known, to become real, than to communicate using the written word. It's vastly more effective than any other approach. If God were to diminish himself and set part of himself apart, and to take human form and to be like my dog here has a plush animal that's sitting outside of my door, and to become that plush animal which I can see, he would be less real than me being able to see him by reading his testimony in the Torah. Both ways, I'm using my eyes to see. But one is vastly more effective, vastly more enlightening, vastly more effective at proving that he exists and demonstrating who he is. So it is the reason that God used the written testimony of his Torah guidance to reveal himself to us. Everyone listening can meet him there.